amazing to me. I keep reading about certain ball players, and one day I look on television and he's black. There's no longer a mention of Joe Blow, Negro ball player, this kind of thing, which is as it should be. I think they should be judged solely on their abilities out there, and the race shouldn't have anything to do with it. One of the things that I've always felt was if we're really to solve our problems, we've got to do it interracially. We broke the barrier in baseball on an interracial basis, and if this country is to survive, we've got to deal with that drug program, because it's pretty obvious, at least as far as I'm concerned, that every youngster in this country, in one way or the other, unless we do something about this problem, is going to come into contact with marijuana or heroin or some kind of drug in some kind of way. And unless we change our priorities, unless we put a great deal of emphasis on helping our young people, I just can't see the drug problem diminishing in the way that it should. And it is, to me, the worst problem that we have in this country today, even worse than the race problem.
On April 15th, 1947, Jackie Robinson trotted out to first base for the Dodgers at Brooklyn's Ebbets Field. In doing so, he erased the unofficial color line that had stood in big league baseball for nearly 60 years. By the end of the season, his dazzling play had earned him baseball's inaugural Rookie of the Year award. It was an exclamation point to an amazingly important moment in sports, not just in black sports, but for all sports. Jackie Robinson proved what most of us already knew to be true, that black athletes deserved a place alongside the best white players in the national pastime. And he also proved that we could succeed and excel in sports. Unfortunately for many people, especially the young people of today, the story of Jackie Robinson ends there. Yeah, some may know that he was also enshrined in Cooperstown as he was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1962. But what often goes unnoticed and forgotten is the perspective of his activism after his baseball career. Few sports journalists or civil rights activists speak of the type of activism he engaged in after his baseball career. And today's race-baiting grievance merchants who are completely agenda-driven are in effect erasing the actual history of Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson had a history of being a champion for civil rights, and he battled aggressively for equality after leaving baseball. His endeavors to bring awareness to the scourge of racism lasted nearly twice as long as his Major League Baseball career did. The reason you don't hear as much about his equality efforts is because Jackie Robinson was a conservative Republican. I bet you didn't know that. You see, after announcing his retirement from baseball in early 1957, Jackie Robinson was named Vice President for Personnel at the Chock full of Nuts Coffee Company. He also joined the NAACP as chair of its $1 million Freedom Fund Drive, eventually earning election to the organization's board of directors. However, executive positions weren't enough for the former high-profile athlete, whose competitive juices had him itching to get back into the public arena. He joined Martin Luther King Jr. as an honorary chairman of the Youth March for Integrated Schools in 1958, and he became involved with Dr. King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Let me say that again. He got involved with Dr. King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Did you know that Martin Luther King Jr. operated a Southern Christian Conference? Ask yourself why nobody says that Jackie Robinson was involved in a Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Jackie Robinson also began writing a syndicated newspaper column through which he mused on matters of race relations, family life, and politics. Did you hear that? Jackie Robinson was a huge advocate for the development of the nuclear family. A nuclear family is a family group consisting of both parents and their children. Its existence is in great opposition of the single-parent family and all the familial types they're trying to promote today. Robinson advocated for and worked to promote the traditional family unit. Jackie Robinson took to advocating advancement, quote, through the ballot and the buck. He became a prominent political supporter, throwing his weight behind, wait for it, Republican Richard Nixon. During the 1960 presidential election campaign, Jackie Robinson actively campaigned for none other than Richard Nixon. Subsequent to Nixon's loss to Kennedy, he became a strong ally of yet another Republican, New York Republican Nelson Rockefeller. All right, tell me, Is your mind blown yet? Have you heard any of this before? He also founded the Black-owned Freedom National Bank, which provided loans and services for the minority community. Imagine that, a black man in the 1960s fostering and advocating for financial literacy and financial independence for black people. However, by the mid-1960s, Jackie Robinson was becoming an obsolete figure in the civil rights movement. Jackie Robinson was an advocate of the non-violent approach of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and at that time, the NAACP. He rejected the more extreme measures proposed by charismatic young leaders like the Black Panthers and even had heated exchanges with Malcolm X. Because of his conservative approach, he started to fall out of favor with the black radicals of the day. They chose to let a young Cassius Clay and Jim Brown speak for their causes, and they forced Jackie Robinson back to the bench. Did you know that while the world knows him as Muhammad Ali, he never legally changed his name from Cassius Clay? While this was happening, Jackie also began being distanced from the NAACP as that organization changed as well. In 1967, he publicly split with the NAACP over its, quote, unresponsive leadership. Furthermore, his political views left him increasingly isolated as an activist. He clashed with Dr. Martin Luther King over the support of the Vietnam War. In 1970, Jackie Robinson, the entrepreneur, launched the Jackie Robinson Construction Company to build low and moderate income housing for minorities.
We just feel that it's important to have an interracial construction company. It's important to have a black company in these times because there is a tremendous void.
Sadly, in October of 1972, Jackie Robinson died of a heart attack. Jackie Robinson is justly remembered for breaking down racial barriers and opening the doors of opportunity for black people across professional sports. But long after he was done with baseball, he continued to fight for equal footing as a writer, organizer, speaker, businessman, and conservative political supporter. He faced tremendous disadvantages that he didn't face as a gifted athlete on the field. Jackie Robinson should be remembered for not just breaking the color barrier in baseball, but succeeding as well in life. Jackie Robinson is a true American hero. For people to be comparing Jackie Robinson to a trans swimmer and a judge who can't define what a woman is and is light on pedos is an absolute insult to everything that Jackie Robinson stood for. Shame on them for fraudulently attaching his name to these causes. Jackie Robinson was a conservative black man. He would never have supported trans swimmers or pedo-friendly judges. Hey, if you like this video, please feel free to check this one out, which I talk about woke sports at Woke ESPN. Let me know what you think about Jackie Robinson. I'd love to hear your comments and share this video if it was of interest to you. Thank you. Talk to you soon.